I'll start with something that isn't in your release today. I don't see coronavirus in the release today. Can you give us some insight into how you see this impacting your business? Because surely there will be some exposure.
Really carnage there in the Asian stock market. Meanwhile,
first of all, of course, our thoughts are with all the people who are infected or already even sick from that disease. This is for sure a horrible thing. Business-wise, we don't think we are heavily impacted. If not, the economic or the health situation will deteriorate drastically going forward. So in that sense, so far we don't feel we are impacted a lot. Why is that? Many of our covers exclude pandemic risks explicitly. And on the life and health side, we are of course affected, but the numbers of affected people still is pretty limited, and then our geographic focus is much more on North America than on Asia.
Christoph, I wonder if you have assets in equities, and if you're worried about the drops that we've seen across equity markets yesterday and over the past week.
Yeah, well, of course we do have equities. I mean, it's a major part of our investment portfolio. But I have to say we are positioned pretty conservatively anyway as an insurance company. We are working with derivatives to hedge ourselves against downsides throughout the year. And then we are underexposed right now anyway. And then you shouldn't forget, over the last couple of months, all the equity markets have been pretty favorable. So the correction we are seeing right now is something which potentially was to be expected anyway. And so far, we at least don't see a global recession coming in immediately. Again, if this pandemic continues to deteriorate drastically, then the situation might be different. But so far, we think there will be a recovery going forward, and we are not that pessimistic.
Do you consider this a pandemic now, Christoph? I mean, is this officially a pandemic, and does that trigger any clauses for you as a reinsurer?
I'm not even sure if there's an official definition for pandemic. So it was just a word I was using now. I would not take too much importance to the wording here. We have many affected people now in several countries. Still China being the majority of the affected people. So in that sense, if you call it a disease, a pandemic, an epidemic, I wouldn't put too much importance to the wording here.
Excuse me for being a bit confused. You mentioned that some parts of your business wouldn't be affected by this because pandemics are explicitly excluded, but then there's uncertainty as to what a pandemic exactly means. So just explain that to us a little, Christoph.
Well, there are certain definitions in legal terms in the policies what pandemic really means that could vary from client to client, and they are not excluded because we weren't happy to insure them. We are, of course, but many of our clients just decided not to include them in their covers, and therefore our risk overall is pretty limited. There are some policies which will be affected, but again, this is all to an extent and to an amount which is easily digestible for us as we speak. As I said, if things go south substantially, then the situation might change. But so far, we are not affected.
Two-part question here on premiums, Christoph. Really the same question, but last year's disasters, how have they affected pricing? And then secondly, does this pandemic affect pricing for you and your clients?
Well, on your second questions, I think it's really too early to tell. So let's see if and how insurance markets would react on what we are observing right now. If clients are more inclined to include pandemic protection also in their covers going forward, if this market will change or not, that's still something to be seen in the future. Looking backward, we had a pretty intense claims year last year, especially on the cat side, typhoons in Japan. Hurricane Dorian, of course, also. And in loss-affected areas, we see really a positive price development, which we were able to underwrite and also in our new business. Premiums are up more than 4% for us, and of these 4% growth, more than 1% is due to price price increases, which we assume as a very favorable renewal as of 1st of January.